Alright, so if you just saw my Oscar video, or if you're seeing this one first, this is going to be a kind of review video. We're going to look at 6 films that I've seen recently that I wanted to get my opinions out on, to kind of share a little bit, a little bit more insight into why I'm picking what I'm picking for Oscar nominations at this point, and also just to, spill my guts as far as reviews and stuff. So, let's see, I've got 6 films. The first one, I'm going to go in the order of how I saw them here. So, Pain and Glory is up first. And, yeah, traditionally I'm not a big, foreign language in the theater film watcher, but, with Antonio Banderas in it and stuff, and it just felt like, Maldivar, and it was getting some of the best reviews of the year, and a lot of people I know online that saw it really liked it, so I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll see it. And plus, it'd be nice to see especially if Antonio does get nominated, to see his role and stuff. And I have to say, I think the movie's fine. I didn't love it. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I don't know if I even liked it. Liked it enough to give it a fresh review. I initially did, a 7 out of 10, but man, I just feel like the more I think about it, the less I kind of got out of it, actually. And maybe it's, obviously I'm a younger guy, and this movie's more reflectionary, very much, there's a lot of movies that are very reflectionary this year. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, obviously, this one, Pain and Glory, but it's also very self-reflexive. It's about a filmmaker, so I feel like this one obviously could get a lot of love with some people in the Academy. But yeah, I feel like, for me personally, again, all these reviews are going to be non-spoiler, by the way. We're not going to give anything away here too important, but there's a couple of scenes in this that I did pick out that I did really like. For the last shot, the last scene really made me smile. I'll just say that. And I think this is definitely one of Antonio's better performances. If not his best performance, definitely one of his better ones. And it's definitely one of his more richer characters as well. A lot of the narration and stuff, I think, helps with that. And I think it's very well directed, too, by the way. But, yeah, again, I just wasn't really in love with this movie a lot. The score I liked. The cinematography was pretty good. I did like, there's one character who comes in. He's very important character in the first half, and then he, completely disappears in the second half. And that's, one of his best friend characters, who was, an actor he worked with before, who supposedly they hated their guts on the set, but since then they've kind of sort of made up. Or did they? It's a very questionable thing. But the actor there, especially, he gets a couple parts where he's a more theater actor now, and he gets a couple monologues. I'm like, damn, he's really good. And obviously, yeah, Antonio's good. Penelope Cruz shows up a little bit as his mom when he's growing up and stuff, and that was good performance from her and everything. She's always good. So yeah, I don't know. It wasn't the most entertaining film to watch. Again, it's very self-reflexive, very very personal work and stuff, and it's I go either way with that. It's sometimes I like it and sometimes not. Roma I could go with, but again, I say to the kind of casual movie fan who just sees it on Netflix, watch the first 45 minutes of Roma up to the point where they say she's pregnant or whatever, then skip to the last 45 minutes, and then you'll see if that's more of the narrative parts, whereas the middle section is definitely more slice of life, bicycle thieves, Vittorio De Sico kind of slice of life film. So I know that's not everybody's taste, but general movie fans, I would recommend doing it that way. But, yeah, for Pain and Glory, yeah, again, 7 out of 10 is where I'm at right now. The more I think about it, maybe the lower that score goes, but it was fine. It was entertaining enough, as was. Had, definitely enough aspects to it that I liked. But, yeah, that's that one there. Jojo Rabbit's up next. I'll put in time codes, guys, don't worry. So, next up is Jojo Rabbit. And this one I just flat out loved. And I remember I sat there and I'm like, by the end I'm like, yeah, this is the best film I've seen all year. And it was for the time. I'll just leave it at that. Overall, again, I kind of mentioned a little bit in that other Oscar video there. Again, if you haven't seen that one yet, then I recommend you go back and see that one at some point. The updated Oscar predictions for November. This movie really runs the gambit of emotions, and that's, or gamut of emotions, not gambit. It's, it's very emotional in some parts, very sad, but then it's also kind of romantic, and definitely the chemistry between the two younger actors, two leads there, fantastic, really well done. It's obviously very funny. There's there's one part, again, in the beginning, which is kind of like a little bit of a plot point that kind of sets off the rest of the story in motion. And when it happens, even though it's not something you would traditionally laugh at, I was laughing my ass off. It was so funny. and stuff like that. And there's definitely moments that are very joyous and very, celebratory moments, but it's also, again, very sweet and very emotional and very sad in other parts and very dramatic in other parts. And it just runs it really well. And again, I felt the ending, I was like, oh, this is such a sweet ending for this movie. And it really, really did. You know, in that last, 10 minutes, it just really ran you through the gambit there. Again, it kind of ran you through the organ grinder, so to speak, of emotions there. And, and it's a very non-traditional story. It's very much a, director's vision kind of movie. But Taika, I think, did an awesome job with this. He's very funny as Hitler imaginary Hitler, until he has to be a little bit more serious, which is great. The little boy is terrific. I'm not great with names for younger actors. I don't know, so he's terrific. This is my introduction, actually, to Thomasin McKenzie, who plays the little girl in the film. Well, not little girl. I guess she's supposed to be 17 or 19 or 18 or something like that. But yeah, she's fantastic. I need to go back and watch the one she was in last year. Everybody loved Leave No Trace. But she definitely left a big impression here. I'm like, man, I mean, talk about the most hard on your shoulder, very, very, very sweet, and very enduring character. I mean, very much she had that all the way through. Same goes for Scarlett Johansson's character. Again, very, very character you latch on to and really, really like. Now, personally, I wouldn't mind seeing her nominated for supporting actress here. Again, I'm kind of a little reluctant to put her in for that because it's I don't know. It's her lead performance in Marriage Story, I think, is just going to draw so much attention. She's never been nominated by the Academy either, so I don't. Even though she's a very good actress, I don't see them going all the way and getting her 2 nominations in the same year. I don't see that like a Jamie Foxx situation for about 10, 15 years ago, where it's yeah, we like him. Oh, we like him enough to get him nominated in 2 categories the same year. It's man, that just doesn't happen often. So, I don't know. Yeah, it just, overall, I just really, really like this movie a lot. Again, I kind of mentioned a few things. The score is very good. Michael Giacchino. The costume design, very good. In some spots, very, very, some of the bright colors just really stand out and stuff, especially the Scarlett Johansson wardrobe. It just... almost like her wardrobe, her costumes feel like a new character themselves. It's very, very well done in that way. I liked JoJo's little friend. I liked the little boy. He calls himself the fat little boy or whatever. It's that was, again, very sweet, enduring character. Sam Rockwell, I actually, from the trailers, I'm like, oh, he looks like he's just popping up to have fun in this. But, man, he really does have eventually a good part. And it's his character, it's man, you just don't, I don't want to give too much away, again, if you haven't seen it, and I definitely recommend you see this, and this is a 10 out of 10 for me, obviously, but Rockwell's character, you just don't know which direction he's going to go as the story progresses, and it's very, very good. And there's one moment, Stephen Merchant's only in it for one scene, but it's a very, very funny scene at first, and then it gets very, very tense, and then it's very funny again, it gets alleviated, then the tension comes back on, and it's man, it's very well done. I mean, I'm usually one of the first people to complain when it's your style here is going all over the place. First you want to be this, then you want to be that in the same scene. It's but I mean, you can do it, and JoJo is a masterclass of doing that well, where you can really weave around the cones there, so to speak, of different feels and different emotions in it. It really runs that very, very well. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like the only thing I kind of didn't like about the movie was the introduction of the Thomasin McKenzie character. Felt like she sets that up in a way where it's very, very different than her character through the rest of the movie, and it's obviously there's reasons for that because of the situation and everything, but it's I don't know, it's just very that's another thing too. It kind of a bigger problem with that through the movie is the movie kind of has its cake and eats it too, as far as what perspective is the film being told from. Is this 100% from JoJo's perspective, where everything we see is not 100% what it is, because obviously Hitler is not showing up right beside him. He's not running with him at Nazi camp. I love that phrase, Nazi camp. But, it's what is true and what is not. We're very, it wants to shift to, oh, this is 100% happening, to, no, it's clearly from the boy's perspective. And it kind of, again, wants to kind of weave through that too. And it's that I feel it doesn't 100% successfully do. But, yeah, that's about the only major, big criticism I would have about the film. Otherwise, yeah, I thought it was, in some ways an unpredictable movie. You don't really 100% know where the story is going all the way through. It's a very, very good movie in that way, too. And, yeah, this is one of the best films of the year. even if you're a little worried about it because it does have so many Nazis in it and all that stuff, it's definitely Taika Waititi pointing his finger directly at, you know, Nazi cause and saying, look at what jerks these guys are. I'm going to make them the laughingstock of the cinema. And I think he's done it. He's absolutely done it here. And, yeah, what else can I say? It's for me, I feel like there wasn't much else really to improve on from what they were going for and what they shot for. They hit it. So it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, talk about, this is, I mean, I saw these first four in the same day. I mean, I've talked a little bit before about, like, seeing Birdman and Whiplash back-to-back. Talk about an awesome screening day. I saw Jojo Rabbit. Then the next up was Ford v. Ferrari, which, if you haven't seen, it's another just kick-ass, awesome movie. And that one is 152 minutes. It does not feel like 152 minutes at all. It flies by, zooms by, so to speak. You know, you get the joke. And it's another 10 out of 10 for me. Now, I'm not, like, I didn't love Logan the way everybody else did with James Mangold. So I'm like, Walk the Line I remember liking a lot. I need to rewatch it. It's been a few years. But I like that more, I think, for the performances than I did the actual film. But this one, the performances I liked, the film I liked, the more or less action scenes I liked, the racing stuff really worked. And this is another one, too, that pulls off kind of like Apollo 13 or Argo, some of those films. It's based around historical material, but it very much gets you into the story. And when stuff happens, you're like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. Is he going to win this race, or is somebody else going to pull up and win? It really suckers you into it, even though if you know the ending or not, which I personally, like at the very end with Le Mans stuff, I did not know the ending of that. But it's like very, very, it just leaves you really guessing and stuff. So, you know, with a lot of these biopic films, you know, traditionally the thing we always complain about is there's no surprises. There are surprises in this movie. There was definitely stuff that again, I was not an expert in this field by any means. I know enough with a car to check the oil, check the tires, and that's about it. You know, I know if a gauge goes off or something goes off, you got to fix it right away or else it's a problem. So I know that stuff. I know how to put gas in it, of course. But it's like I'm not a big expert with vehicles and with cars and stuff. So it's like I heard a little. I knew obviously what Ford was. I knew Ferrari. I knew there was I know there's rivalry there and stuff. But the Le Mans stuff was totally fresh to me. A lot of the stuff with the characters of, you know, Carroll Shelby, I knew obviously had Shelby Cobra and the company and stuff. But yeah, I knew a little bit about it going in, but obviously not enough to know the whole story. So yes, it does. It's not a biopic that's not without its surprises. It definitely does have moments where you're like, whoa, I did not know that happened. And some stuff you're like, oh, that had to be fabricated. And then you find out later it's like, shit, it did happen. Especially the way the Le Mans race starts. I'll just give that away. Or not give it away, but hint at that. If you've seen the movie, that was definitely one where I'm like, holy shit, that has to be fabricated, but it's not. So yeah. Yeah, overall, again, there's just not much I had to critique about this film, except for, you know, there's a couple biopic, you know, traditions that get stomped on and stuff, you know. A couple predictable moments there here and there, of course, but it's like, especially like there's one part where they do a different race before Le Mans. It's like, it feels exactly like, oh, we know exactly what's going to happen, and it happens, and it's, yeah, no big surprise. But still a necessary step in the story, as we later find out. But, yeah, as far as performance stuff, Christian Bale, this is a very fun role for him. He's having a blast. And it's, I mean, obviously Vice was a different type of performance, but this, I mean, this is a very, very likable character, especially from that one of his early scenes when he's doing a California, not straightaway, but like a different California. It's the first race in the movie. When he's like, there's clips of this been released. I don't think it's a big spoiler to go into this. It's relatively early in the film. But it's like this guy walks up and he disqualifies the car because the trunk won't shut all the way and stuff. And it's like his reaction to that and how he treats the guy and how he, you know, kind of interacts with Carroll Shelby when he walks up to him. I mean, that scene, right from that scene, I'm like, oh, I'm going to love this character. And he is. He's a fun character throughout the movie. Carroll Shelby, he becomes a very fun character. Good performance from Matt Damon. Not like a best performance from him, but clearly a devoted performance and stuff. I'll say there's some moments later on with his character toward the last 5 minutes, I'll say, where I'm like, man, Damon really did get into this movie, and you feel there's a very, again, I don't want to give anything away here, but the ending has a little more catharsis and a little bit more of an emotional impact than I thought it would. But obviously, like I hinted at this in the other video, but I saw this in an IMAX screening, and it's like the sound was, I mean, completely like revved up. and whenever the engines roared, or whenever, you know, the exhaust, you know, was right there on the screen, it's like the whole theater, the whole auditorium just shook because the sound was so cranked up and stuff. So, I mean, if you can absolutely see this movie with the best sound quality, the best whatever, you know, what have you, absolutely see it in that way. Yeah, whether that's an IMAX screening or what have you, see it the best way you can, especially sound-wise, because that leaves a big impact. But yeah, I mean, it's a very involving movie. You get into the story right away. You get into the characters. I mentioned Tracy Letts, but he's good in the movie. He definitely gets again a very good scene early on in the movie where he kind of like address the troops kind of moment, and it's like, man, this is why Tracy Letts is kind of an underappreciated actor. It's like, yeah, he's great in this. And who else did I want to talk about? Shit, there was somebody else that I wanted to point out. Oh, Noah Jupe is good as Ken Miles' kid. It's Christian Bale's kid. I don't know. I feel like there's more to... Obviously, the editing is really good. Obviously, from all that standpoint, it's really good. Yeah, so this is another one I loved. It was like, man, it's like Jojo Rabbit's number one, but this feels like a very close number two because it's just such an exhilarating joyride. It's kind of been previewed by everybody else that saw it early. It's like it's a very crowd-pleasing type movie, but you know what? If they work, they work. So in this case, it really worked. So I'm like, man, Jojo Rabbit was fantastic. Best film I've seen all year. Ford v Ferrari is 2, if not 2, 3 on my list. So I'm like, how does it top? Then you get Parasite. Oh man, I have to say I was not against this movie, but I very much felt like this is a Palme d'Or winner. It's like they traditionally don't get nominated at the Oscars. They're not a big thing. Foreign films, you know, with the exception of Roma last year, it's like, and Amour 6-7 years ago, it's like they don't happen. So it's like, obviously, if it's a good enough film and it was so highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes, everybody got pissed off when it dropped off to 99%, not 100%, which it should be at fucking 100% because it's a great movie. But that's neither here nor there. I was like, you know, I just didn't really believe in the movie, at least for the Best Picture nomination. I'm like, now seeing it, this movie's getting nominated for Best Picture one way or another because it deserves it. On top of everything else, on top of it's a very popular movie. I think it's the cool movie. It's this year's Whiplash in a way where it's like it's that cool movie from a director that not everybody knows. Now, Bong Joon-ho, obviously, much more well-known than Damien Chazelle at the time. But it's a cool movie. Everybody likes it, or most everybody likes it. Very exhilarating, you know, fresh idea movie. So it's oh man, it's just absolutely is the best film of the year. I have to say this. I don't have like hardly any critiques of this movie for what they were shooting for, what they were going for, what the performances were pulled out of the hat and stuff and all that stuff. I don't know what you do to change this movie to improve it. I mean, there's like nothing you can do to improve this movie. The only thing is, and again, I say this to the common moviegoer, if you're not used to seeing films with subtitles and stuff, the first 10, 15-ish minutes are a little slow to get into. But once you get there, there's one specific decision made by one of the main characters early on in the film, but again, about 10, 15 minutes in. There's a certain, you know, look that comes over his face and a light bulb goes off. You can just, you know, almost see it. From that moment on, the movie starts and it goes and it goes and it goes and it builds and it builds and it builds and it keeps going and it keeps getting better and it keeps getting more intense. And as the genre of the film starts to reveal itself, you're like, oh my god, I didn't know I was seeing one of those kind of movies. Yeah, you can tell how excited I am about this. This is a crazy, good, awesome, cool movie. You should absolutely see this film wherever you can. I don't want to say kind of what it is, because again, I went into this very cold. I had seen one preview. I kind of didn't half pay attention because I knew I wanted to see the film. I knew I wanted to see it fresh. So yes, absolutely, I shouldn't give... I'll just basically just say the story really worked for me. The performances worked. Again, we mentioned the dad character in the movie. I don't know his name, but that actor is... I mean, the whole movie is more... It's a very ensemble movie. And I think it's possible... The SAG Ensemble Award, they traditionally do not go for foreign language films in that category, especially. But if they want to go for it this year, Parasite is a movie where that ensemble... I mean, talk about a great ensemble that works together and really does accomplish a lot together. It's a great ensemble in this film. And again, all these actors are very fresh to, especially American audiences. It's like nobody has seen like anybody in any other film, I don't think. But I would say look out. Definitely, one thing as I was watching the movie, a little bit of my cynical brain kicked in a little bit. if not just for the fact of it just came into my head and I couldn't get it out. And I'm like, almost all these actors are going to end up cast in that Shang-Chi movie, aren't they? The Marvel one, because that's traditionally what happens here. I'm like half this cast is going to get cast into either a Marvel role or a big, one of those big tentpole type films, or like the Mulan sequel or something. Or maybe some of these actors are in Mulan. I don't know. That'd be nice to see them pop up again, because I mean, this cast brilliantly plays it. And I also really like how the movie very much does not give you even one character that you can just sit back and say, I completely relate to that character. It's like, or I feel that character's the hero of the story. There are really no heroes here. They're almost all villains in a way. And that's a very fascinating approach, and it's not one we typically see in a movie. So yeah, I definitely have to say that. I don't feel like that's giving too much away. I think almost everybody who's talked about the movie mentions that, so I wanted to mention that too. There's one scene too I'll mention. Obviously, I can't give anything away about what the scene is, but it's a little over halfway through, right before the start of the third act. But there's a certain scene that happens where certain people, I feel like if you've seen the movie, I don't know because there's so many tense moments in the film, especially like I said, as the movie goes on, it just builds and builds, and the tension gets racked up to a beyond, almost to, maybe I'm a little high off the film, but it almost feels like a beyond Hitchcock like sensation of tension. If I want to go that far, but I mean, there's one moment where I'm like, literally, like my whole body tensed up because I'm like, there's no way this is gonna work, and I can't say whether or not it works, but it's like, man alive, it absolutely racks up that tension. So I just can't remember a time when I sat in the theater and just had that much tension going on, where I was just like so worried about what the outcome of this scene was going to be, whether it was going to be good or bad. It didn't matter, because I was going to go wherever this movie was going. I was going to follow it to the edges of the earth, and so to speak. So yeah, I don't know. The only thing I can say, the only people that I think would not like this movie are just people in general who don't like movies. Or people who don't want to sit through a film and have subtitles on all the time. Seriously, if you can get over that, then there's no reason why you shouldn't like this movie. Because this movie has a little bit of everything. It has definitely moments of comedy, moments of thriller, horror moments, I'll say. Not really any too big action beats, so to speak. But, it's a very full movie. And this is going to be the cool movie this year. And it deserves it. It's one of the best movies. Not only, it's the best movie of the year. I would be shocked if this is not in the top 10 of the decade for me. I'm still kind of trying to get my thoughts on that, because it's like, man, there's so many great films I've seen this decade that have made a big impact on me and stuff. And this one is, if it's not going to be like a big, like, what my future is going to be kind of movie, it's definitely one you can say, like, oh man, this is just a fun, awesome movie to watch. And I feel like I'm going to watch this movie a ton of times in the future. Parasite is a 10 out of 10. I can't think of anything that I can say that would be like, oh, I would fix this. Again, the only thing I would say is the first 10-15 minutes are just a little slow to get into. And you're kind of a little confused. Okay, what's the story going to be here? And it's like there's one reveal kind of early on in the movie, in that first 10-15 minutes, just like a shot reveal where you're like, oh, this is where it's the first. I can give this away. It's the first reveal shot of the house where most of the action takes place. It's like, you're like, oh, okay. It's like, it's an impressive moment, but it's like, seriously, this is a great movie. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't like this movie. If you don't like movies, then don't see this movie. That's the only way I can say. But yeah, it's 10 out of 10, best film of the year I've seen so far. I don't know what else is going to come out that can possibly top this, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tall order to fill. And another thing, too, this was my introduction to Bong Joon-ho. I had not seen a Bong Joon-ho film. I had not seen Okja. I had not seen The Host. I'd not seen Snowpiercer or anything. So it's like, yeah, I need to go out and watch some of those films now. So, yeah, he definitely gets in for director, too. I mean, it gets in for screenplay, director, picture, foreign language, international film, so at least those four. But it's an awesome movie. All right, now, next up here, I want to I'm going to look up one thing really quick here, because I'll get into the story here a little bit before I talk in the experience of the film. The next one is The Irishman. I mentioned this a little bit. I did see it. It's in the theater, and as I mentioned in the video, almost verbatim, it's De Niro, it's Pesci, it's Pacino, directed by Scorsese, and it's a 3.5-hour gangster movie. you got to see it on the big screen. I mean, if you're a movie fan, you've got to see it on the big screen. Anyway, so I'll tell you a little bit. I went into the movie. This was a theater I had never been to before, a little art house theater down in, well, okay, I'll mention anyways, Omaha area. Had never been there. And, you know, I got there, you know, decent time. Right when I got into the theater is when the preview started playing, so I'm like, okay, good. And, I mean, pretty packed house. And I have to say, too, the audience for this movie that I went with, it was a 2 o'clock show on a Friday. So it's like, obviously there weren't like, you know, people my age there, and not a lot of them, you know, my work schedule, I have Fridays off, so, which is nice. So, anyway, so I get there and I'm like, almost all this audience is like 50 and above. Like, I'm one of the few under 50 guys here. That's kind of nice, or not nice, but like, you know, like, okay. And I'll tell you what, that audience was pumped. I mean, pumped. Like 75-year-olds extremely excited to see this movie. And I have to say, normally when I see movies, it's like the audiences I'm with, I'm like, yeah, I just get the sense. I'm like, everybody's very quiet, very respectful. Like, yeah, I'm seeing this movie. It's like nobody like, I'm, you know, I'm quiet and respectful too in the theater, but I'm like, when the movie starts, like, I'm into it. Like, especially movies like these that I'm really, really anticipating. Because this one, as soon as they pretty much like announced that this is happening, years and years ago, I'm like, I want to see that. Because I heard a little bit about this general story about how Hoffa, and it's, you know, this guy who supposedly killed Hoffa and stuff, and it's like, man, it's like, yeah, I want to hear that story, because I've always heard about, yeah, Jimmy Hoffa, and they mentioned in the movie, it's like, yeah, kids these days, you know, they don't know who really Hoffa is. They might have heard his name, they heard he disappeared, but they don't know who he is. It's like, I'm like, that's kind of me. Well, you know, minus a few things. I knew he ran the Teamsters, I know a little bit of that stuff, I know obviously there's a lot of events around his supposed death or disappearance that are very not solved and stuff, so I'm like, with Scorsese direct, I'm like, hell yeah, tell me that story. I'm like, I want to hear that story. So, but I mean, I just got the sense, it's like everybody was like, the energy in that room was exciting, and the movie played, you know, like 15 minutes of previews or whatever, and then the lights came up. I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And, you know, the theater owner, one of the guys came down, and he talked a little bit. He's like, first screening in Omaha for this movie, The Irishman, ever, and, you know, everybody applauds. I'm like, people are pumped for this movie. Like, I'm not alone. That's awesome. And I'm like, this is like, it almost kind of pumped it up a little bit for me more, because I was excited. Like, the whole drive down, for me, it's about close to an hour drive. The whole drive down, I'm like getting myself a little bit prepped, like, this is The Irishman. Like, this is Scorsese, and De Niro, and Pacino, and Pesci, and Harvey Keitel, and all these other Scorsese favorites. It's like, this is going to be something you don't see every day. This is never going to happen again. I mean, I don't think so. Certainly not the first time all these people have been together. It's certainly not. That certainly is never going to happen again. And then the theater owner says, and we have a special treat for you guys. He says, somebody is in this room who is in the movie. I'm like, shit, what the heck? I'm like, do not tell me that Scorsese. No, obviously Scorsese wasn't there. No, that would have been cool. That would have been like I would have probably fainted. But he says, there's actually somebody, an actress who's in this movie, who's in the theater with us. She's actually an actress who's from the Omaha area originally, went to school in New York and trained there, and actually was in another Scorsese movie, Wolf of Wall Street, and that's her name is Stephanie Kurtzuba. And she plays De Niro's wife in the movie. So I'm like, and as soon as he said De Niro's wife, I'm like, tell me she is not just like in a one-scene character. And she's not. She's in the movie, you know, for quite a bit of time. So I'm like, and then the announcer, the moderator guy says, you know, stand up, and, you know, and we all applaud for her and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, like this, just a really quick tangent here before we get into the movie. I did see a few years ago, I went to, when I was in college, I went to the South Dakota Film Festival. And they had, Chloe Zhao was there. This is about 4 years ago. So 4 years ago, that's right, 4 years ago. So she had a movie called The Songs My Brothers Taught Me, which is a really good movie. You can find that movie somewhere. I think it was on Netflix for a while. I don't know if it's still there or not. But I remember I sat there, I watched the movie, I'm like, this movie is really good. I'm like, obviously whoever this director is, she's doing great stuff. And you know, we saw the pamphlet, we saw the female director, so I'm like, I knew it was her director. And then she went up, and she was there in the theater, and you know, they did a little Q&A with her afterwards and stuff. And I'm like, the way she was talking to me, I'm like, she's going, if she can find a project that's, you know, a little more, you know, highbrow and not something you only see at the South Dakota Film Festival, which, yeah, that's no slant against it, because the movie was shot, I believe, in South Dakota, had American Indian actors, or you know, people of American Indian descent. all of the movies. So, it very much felt like that was an appropriate, thing for the festival there and stuff. I'm like, man, if she can find like a bigger project that's going to go somewhere, I'm like, she can be a very talented, gifted director. And then, she did The Writer, which I did not see. I want to see that movie really bad. And she's, probably as we speak, filming or doing post work on Eternal. So it's like, that's kind of cool that I saw her before she was famous, so to speak. But it's like, it's like that was kind of a neat experience. The same festival, I'm going to look this guy's name up too here. He is Die Hard 2 is the first thing I think of when I think of this actor. Shit, if I can find his name too. I got to find his name. Not Dennis Franz, but the character who plays Dennis Franz's brother-in-law in the movie or whoever. Joe Costello? Or John Costello, that's right, yeah. He was there too. Or is that him? Maybe it's not him. No, it said he died in 2008. That wasn't him. Sorry, my apologies. Let me find... Come on, he's got to be... Robert Costanzo! That's it. I knew that would... Robert Costanzo, yes. He was there too. He was like a special guest or whoever. He was like a big... Supposedly at this South Dakota Film Festival a few years prior, Kevin Costner showed up, supposedly. And I've never spoken to anybody who was there when he was there or anything. I don't know if there's anything to back that up. But it's like... I remember when they did their thing with Robert and he was up there, it's like people went crazy for him. I don't know if they just recognized him with all the shows and stuff he was in. Because he was in... he was in Sopranos, wasn't he? Pretty sure he was. See, man, he was in everything. I'm just looking at his filmography now on Wikipedia. It's just crazy. He had to have been in Sopranos. Come on, don't tell me he was not in Sopranos. He had to have been. No way. I'm looking it up. I'm not seeing it. Oh well. It's neither here nor there. But it's like, I don't know. Yeah, everybody just recognized him or what it was. But it was like he was like a celebrity. Like people like not fainted around him, but definitely all that stuff. And I remember I was on my way to the bathroom and he was just coming out of the bathroom, not like at the door, but like a little bit ways. And I just kind of nodded to him and he kind of waved at me. And so that's the closest I got to meeting him or stuff. But and I'm not one of those guys who I think I would never like swarm a celebrity or whatever. I think I would probably be like that. I'm sure you get this a lot. At that festival, I knew he was getting it a lot where people are like, oh, get me an autograph, take a picture with me. And all that. I'm like, I don't know if I'm one of those guys who would do that personally. Of course, having never, rubbed shoulders with anybody like that before, but it's like, I just kind of wanted to keep my distance stuff. Not that I was freaked out by him or anything, not that I was scared or anything, but I was just like, I'm sure he gets this a lot, so I'm just going to wave and stuff to him, or I'm just going to nod to him and stuff. So yeah. But it's like, I remember they played the clip, and I was like, immediately when his face came, I'm like, Saturday Night Fever. And yeah, he is. He's the guy toward the beginning of the movie that walks in. He's like, I'm trying, I want to paint a color that's going to, match my wife's ass or whatever. And Travolta says to him, what color is your wife's ass now? And he's like, you want to know what color my wife's ass is? Like that stuff. And yeah, he's the guy in the beginning of Die Hard 2 that gives Bruce Willis the ticket and he comes back later and stuff. It's like, yeah, I always liked seeing him in movies. Yeah, he's popped up in other stuff I've seen him in for sure. But yeah. So yeah, he was there too. And the top one, the big celebrity guest was Doug Jones. The guy who works with Del Toro. He was the creature in Shape of Water and stuff. And I remember he actually came up to, because I was again with my college buddies and stuff, college group that went down to the festival. He came up to our group afterwards and talked with a lot of us one-on-one. I got to, kind of shake hands with him, and I got to... So I guess technically I did have a little one-on-one with a celebrity, I guess, if you call him. I always think celebrity like Jack Nicholson, sunglasses, that's always what everybody thinks of. But like famous actors and stuff, I guess Doug Jones would be one. But and yeah, I remember he... and this is not a Me Too movement or anything. Not a Me Too moment or anything, but he kind of petted us. And it's like, I guess that's the thing he does at all the stuff he goes to. So, I guess somebody had told us that in advance or something. Or as soon as he started doing it, somebody's like, oh, he does this. I'm like, he does? Okay. And we moved on afterwards. But another thing, too, a couple of my friends, and they might have been, for all I know, this didn't happen, but I remember they said, they talked to him a little later on. They wanted to ask him a question of like, hey, we have this idea for this movie. They wanted to do like a half documentary, half like narrative feature about like, it was like a prison drama sort of ish, but it was like those, you've heard of those like college experiment things where they lock people in rooms for like 72 hours and stuff. There's like a Stanford experiment or something that's super famous for that. they wanted to do something in that vein, or another study that had been conducted like that. I remember they said, conjecture of course, but like they said that Doug Jones had mentioned something like he wanted to be a part of it, like he wanted to either get them in touch with people to help them make it as professionally as they could, because these are obviously like 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, and he wanted to be involved with it, like acting in it too. Obviously, that's just what they said. I heard him mention it once, and of course, nothing has materialized as of yet. So it's like, yeah, if he was nice enough to at least go into that much detail with them and stuff, it's like, that's cool. So it's like, and obviously, with Stephanie there, it's like in the theater yesterday, I was like, part of my brain, because I work, as I've mentioned, a few times, for Cultured Vultures for freelance. I'm like, because I had plans, because I knew Knives Out I was going to see the same day, and I did see that too yesterday. At an early screening. So I'm like, I know that screen time is kind of coming up, so I can't, I wanted to have dinner somewhere else and then come back and see the movie. So, I'm like, man, I said, if I could sit down and do just like an interview with her, impromptu interview or something, that'd be nice to get for the site and stuff, and to, talk with her and stuff. But, and yeah, she's good in the movie, but, yeah, obviously not a big role, but, she gets, definitely some stuff. And the first time she pops up in the movie, she got a big pop in the theater. She, everybody applauded and stuff. And yeah, it's like, I was like, man, that's not something that happens to me every day. Middle of America, what do you know? So anyway, so now that I've delayed this as far as possible, what can I say about The Irishman? It's very great. I really liked it a lot. Is it best of the year? No. Is it top 10? Definitely. I'll tell you this, I liked a lot of the movie, and I have to say at 2 hours, or not even 2 hours, 3 hours and just shy of 3.5 hours, like 3 hours, 29 minutes, there's definitely, I felt that as I watched the movie. It didn't fly by for me. I'll just say that. There's definitely, like, there's one stretch of the movie, starting with, I guess, stuff I don't like, or stuff that I didn't care for. There's a stretch when Hoffa, and I'll speak a little bit historically of stuff that has happened, so it's not necessarily like big spoilers of the film, but Hoffa goes to prison at one point, and there's a little bit of a story of what Pesci and what De Niro are up to while he's in prison. That stretch of the movie, I felt, didn't really give me much. It was kind of like a 20, except for one, there's a very, very sweet moment that happens there, for me personally, because a famous comedian at the time shows up, and it was like, it's somebody, I know Scorsese has a personal connection to that person. I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen it. It's definitely something that when it pops up in the movie, I think that's a nice surprise for everybody to kind of discover on their own. But when that happened, I was like, it almost, thinking back, I'm like, but then I would lose that. It's like, it was almost worth it to, this, it was like a 20-minute stretch of the film. It was almost worth it just to get that one little moment in there. Because it's such a nice moment and stuff. But still, it's like that little stretch, it's like, it doesn't really tell us anything we don't know already about these characters, which is, stuff happens with them, paint houses, yep, they explain that early on in the movie. And also, it doesn't really have a big impact on what happens kind of in the next scenes. It's like, it's just another thing that happened, and it's like, Marty, we're at 3 hours 29 minutes. It's like, if there's a reason why some people were maybe passing on your movie here, it's like, maybe it's that little stretch. As good, obviously the whole movie's well filmed, the whole movie's well shot, well edited and stuff, but it's like, that whole stretch, I just kind of started saying, like, this is why this movie is 3 hours and 29 minutes. It's just because it's just taken a while to get to the next stuff. But I'll tell you what, there's a stretch of the film right after that, which gets to, again, without giving too much away, the fate of Jimmy Hoffa's character. Like his fate and stuff, how it's decided and stuff. It's about a 30-minute stretch of the film. That is about the best 30-minute stretch of any film I've seen this year, with the exception of, Parasite. Like the whole movie of Parasite. But, except for, again, maybe that first 10, 15 minutes. But still, holy cow. That whole stretch film, again, talk about tension building up. It's like there is so many things that can happen in that are just so well done. Brilliantly directed scene from Martin Scorsese. Well acted. And here's the thing. I kind of talked about this a little bit in the review, in the other video there with De Niro, and that's, unfortunately, his character is very one-note, very wooden performance for the first 2/3 of the movie, or seemingly so. There's a couple, break the tension moments, with him. He smiles a couple times, but it's like, he just has the same expression on his face, like the whole movie. The very serious, closed mouth, beady, contact eyes, whatever, whatever. It's that the whole movie. And then finally in the third act, there's especially one scene where he has to call somebody, and you know, I don't want to give too much else away there. You know, he has to call somebody, and it's like that. I'm like, dude, that's the best scene De Niro's done in years. I'm like, it reminds me of the attic crying scene in Silver Linings Playbook, where it's like all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you forget just how much range De Niro can have as an actor. It's like, especially when he's so wooden in the first 2/3 of the movie, but especially that third act, it's like. Again, I'm a little worried that some Oscar voters, if they just don't like Marty's work, there's not fans of this stuff, they're afraid of the runtime, they just don't want to watch the movie, or this is not their type of movie. It's like they're going to, you know, and all that stuff. It's like if enough of those people don't see that and get to that third act where really De Niro lays it on and really, you know, his performance really comes out, it's like he might miss for that Best Actor category, believe it or not. I just a little bit of a feeling there. Again, he is such a big name. It would be his first nomination in a few years, obviously. It's with Scorsese. It's in a movie that's going to be very high up there for a lot of people in the Academy. So he'll get in, I feel. But it's like, I'm just almost afraid that maybe he might miss maybe a place or two along the stretch of the season there. I kind of mentioned Al Pacino in this movie. Incredible. Best performance he's given in years. I would even argue decades. You have to go back to like Heat, to the last time I think Pacino was this good, or maybe Scent of a Woman, one of those two. And it's an explosive performance. It's, you know, he gets a couple big meltdown scenes that are great. I mean, and I have to say too, another thing, I'll get into the de-aging stuff, because the de-aging for the most part worked for me in this movie, and the effects and the, you know, technology and stuff. For the most part, it worked. With Pacino, it probably worked the best. Because I remember the first time he popped up in the movie, like in the flesh, the audience, there was almost like a little bit of a gasp in across the theater. Not like a, ooh, look at that gasp, but like a, wow, they did it. Like, he looks like Pacino in the late 90s, early 2000s. They really authentically did it with him. De Niro, when he's in his 20s, 30s, there's maybe one or two shots that are a little iffy. There's actually one scene, it's toward the start of the third act, where he's in a kitchen, and it's a few cutaway shots to him, and it's like, for whatever reason, it's like, all of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, the effects budget just got cut in half. But other than that, it's like that work is pretty seamless on De Niro, I have to say. They really do a good job with that, taking out all the wrinkles and stuff, and really making him look like he's 30, 40, 50 years old there. Pesci, they do a little bit with, but eventually his character gets aged up to where it's close to where he is. They age him up a little bit more later on in the film, and I do have to say, personally, when they age up certain characters in the last 20 minutes or so of the film, I mean, most time when I talk about makeup, I talk about bad makeup or whatever, unless it's like Vice or something like that. But like this, it's like, seriously, props to the makeup department. They really, I mean, it is completely believable, the makeup at the end, I'll say. I don't want to say which characters, that kind of gives away who lives and who doesn't, but like, those characters that get the makeup job at the end, I mean, really, really good work. Like, it's very, very realistic with that. De Niro, I think they do technically age up a little bit by the end too. I think it's not a big surprise that he gets, you know, he lives through most of the movie, or if not most of it, all of it. I'll just say that. But yeah, especially there, I'm like, man, again, very realistic. And I'll tell you what, there is one thing too, maybe that there's the final shot of the movie and the kind of the final scene. There's again, as we mentioned with a couple other movies this year, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and with shoot, what was the other one? I just thought of it. It's like Pain and Glory, right? Where it's kind of like, you know, reflecting on old age and stuff. This is definitely like the film that does it the most, I think, other than maybe the one scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with DiCaprio. But there's you know, the whole movie is kind of leading up to this catharsis of, you know, man, I've lived out all my years. I'm alone now. Pretty much all my friends are gone. Or they're gone, or they're dying, you know, or, you know, and my family doesn't like me. My wife, you know, is not really going to be there for me. My children are not there for me. You know, all this stuff, and it's like, there's one point, it's a very funny line where they mention something with his lawyer. I have to say, as soon as when that line happened, I'm like, I just cracked up, and the whole theater cracked up too. Again, this audience was very, very into this movie. I felt. Laughing a lot in the movie, and there's a good deal of comedy in this movie. Like, it really works, and there's, you know, a couple good moments of tension and good couple big, you know, like when somebody gets it, you're like, whoa, okay. And yeah, when a certain character gets it in the movie, there were again a few gasps, but again, it's like, you know, from everything that was coming up, and like, it was almost felt a lot like a similar scene in an earlier Scorsese movie. again, I feel like if I say which one it is and which scene it is, you're going to know exactly what it is if you haven't seen it. So I don't want to give that away. But it's like, again, it had a big impact on the audience. But again, I was a little like, yep, I know this is coming. And when it happens, it's like, yep, it happens. Anyways, there's what was I getting to before that? But yeah, there's the ending there. Right. There's about the last scene there. There's a moment that happens with De Niro's character where it's like, it's very much a moment of like, you know, he's lived his life, and this is kind of like the thing, like one of the few things he's taken away from it. And it's not like emotional like makes you cry, but it's definitely like a, oh, okay, that's kind of how we end moment. And I think the fact the movie is so long at that point and so much happens, you could argue that makes a bigger impact for that final scene and for those final moments. But I, again, argue there's a way you can get to that without making the movie 3 hours and 29 minutes. I think there's a way you can get to it in a 3 hour or a 2.5 hour aspect where you cut out a few scenes here and there. Then again, you know, Scorsese's been doing this so long, he probably knows better than I do. But personally, I don't know if I would have preferred, but I definitely would have liked to have seen what a version of this movie at 3 hours flat or at 2.5 hours would have looked like. And if you can make that argument that we wouldn't have had that kind of, not emotional, I didn't cry in this movie, but like, you know, the kind of, again, cathartic, you know, ending we get, it's like, you know, you could argue we can't really get that without the full impact of the whole story there. But yeah, I mentioned, the aging and stuff. Now, yeah, I did mention a little bit in the video there, this is a very subdued performance from Joe Pesci, and I don't feel like I'm giving anything away here, but Joe Pesci is known for being the explosive guy. That's almost his MO, you know, whether it's Home Alone, or obviously Goodfellas, won an Oscar for it. Casino, Raging Bull, you know, even JFK, you know, there's it's a mystery wrapped inside of an enigma, you know, that moment and all that stuff. At least, I haven't seen that one in so long, can't remember if he's that crazy through the whole movie. But it's like, Pesci is that explosive guy, even in My Cousin Vinny, which is, I argue, probably his best performance. Well, I don't know, maybe it's my personal favorite, but like, you know, because Goodfellas, it's hard to top that, I get it. But, and I do like him in Casino quite a bit too. But, My Cousin Vinny is such a fun movie to go back and see, though. But here he is very, you know, straight and narrow through the movie, and he doesn't really get too worked up, and there's no big explosion scene with him. So it's like, I was a little, not like disappointed, like, oh, I'm going to knock the movie for it, but like, it was like a little bit of like it feels like this movie's missing something. But like, again, not to the point where I'm like, you know, this movie sucks now because Pesci doesn't get a big explosion thing. But it's like, it's very subdued performance. So I feel like in that respect, that could hurt his chances to be nominated for supporting actors. That's why I've taken him out for the Oscars. I have him in for the Globes. I'm in for Critics' Choice because there's 6 nominees there. But yeah, I just feel like he might be vulnerable there for that supporting actor race. Who else did I like? Ray Romano shows up. He's fun. Bobby Cannavale's fun. Stephen Graham plays this character who you want to kick his teeth out every time he comes on screen. Another Harvey Keitel mentioned, yeah, he's got some fun scenes. Anna Paquin, yeah, she gets like maybe 5 lines in the whole movie, but a lot of her is just looking mad at De Niro. Stephanie Kurtzula, we mentioned, yep, she's pretty good. One person, I always see him pop up in movies, whether it's Black Mass, or The Post, or Bridge of Spies, or this movie, Jesse Plemons. Why? Okay, and I personally, part of this is ignorance on my part, because I have not seen the season he did of Fargo. I haven't seen the, what was it called, the Black Mirror stuff he did, or whatever. Why does this guy not get any leading roles? He is acting circles around so many people in these different movies. Like, there's one scene in particular I remember in Bridge of Spies where I'm like, he's acting circles around Tom Hanks and the eventual Oscar winner, Mark Rylance. I'm like, wow, I'm like, this guy is a talented actor. I feel that's also that way about Michael Shannon, too. He's another kind of one of those actors who's always, like, acting circles around everybody else when he's in the scene, when he's in the scene with anybody else. Especially, I felt like Nocturnal Animals, which, Gyllenhaal was great in that movie, but whenever Michael Shannon on screen, you're like, okay, here's an actor. But, and that's no offense, obviously, to anybody else in that movie, but it's like, definitely you get that feel. I get that feel every time Jesse Plemons on screen. There's one scene with him kind of later on in the movie, it's in that stretch I talked about, that half-hour stretch, where I'm like, dude, this guy is acting circle. I mean, the guy who's next to him, the actor who plays another one of those kind of mobster characters, is very good. I don't know him at all. I don't know if I've seen him in anything else, but he's good. I'm like, these two going back and forth is really great. I'm like, Jesse is acting circles around, not necessarily acting circles around that other guy, but he's definitely, you know, up to his caliber. And De Niro's just sitting in the back seat, just, you know, being a son. And obviously what his character is going through that moment, you know, it's like you don't expect him to be, you know, doing anything else. But it's like, man, it's just, wow. Why does this guy not be like the lead character in different, maybe he doesn't want to be, maybe he just wants to be that kind of character actor. But I always appreciate seeing him pop up in movies and stuff. And let's see, what else? I've seen him in a couple other things, I think this year, or with, God, there's something else I thought I saw him in. Oh, he did show up in Vice. That's right. I can't remember who he was in Vice. Kurt. I remember the name. Shit, who was he in that? What did his character do? Anyways, but oh yeah, he's the narrator through the movie. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate him popping up in that. Probably for whatever reason my voice is starting to go out. In Hostiles, he shows up. I saw that one recently for a Culture Vultures piece I did. I forget, he's in The Master too. I have not seen that one. Yeah. But yeah, Hostiles. Yeah, there's one. That's probably the one role where I'm like, oh, okay, he picked the wrong one this time. Oh yeah, another one is American Made from a couple of years ago too. I like him in that a lot. Again, he only pops up in a couple scenes. You're like, man, why is this guy not in the movie more? But yeah, with Hostiles, it's like it's more his character than his performance. But yeah, his character is stupid in that movie. It's like seriously. There's one moment in Hostiles with his character. It's been out a couple of years, but I don't want to give it away anyways. Where his character does something, I'm like, that would never happen ever. That is, I mean, talk about, it's a cliche moment, and it's also for a person in his standing, he would never ever do that. So, you know. Anyways, yeah, so back to The Irishman, though. Yeah, I mean, the screenplay's great. A lot of the dialogue is great. A lot of the dialogue, unfortunately, a lot of the great dialogue is in the trailer and stuff. One thing I do want to mention, it's not necessarily a critique or anything, but just an interesting thing about it, is the movie kind of opens, and as we get, you know, to like the actual start of the movie, it's like, we see in big letters pop up, I heard you paint houses. And it's like, was that the title screen? Because this movie's called The Irishman, right? And I remember, actually a few months ago, probably closer to a year ago now, it's right after, not long after De Niro was at was Tony's or whatever it was, and he did the fuck Trump moment, you know, whenever, you know, and then after then it was like, oh, then he did Saturday Night Live, because everybody kind of recognized, oh yeah, he's a big liberal, he hates Trump, so let's get him on everything. And I'm not going to, say that's not a good or bad thing or whatever, that doesn't matter. I'm just setting up the time frame there. But he did an interview with CNN. I remember I watched it because it mentioned, you know, he's talking about his movie, The Irishman. I'm like, yes, I want to hear more about this movie, because this was 2018. This was like, where like this is probably about the point we had just learned that Netflix was still working on it. They were still really excited about it, but it was going to be till 2019. It was going to be delayed to 2019. It wasn't going to come out in 2018. So we're like, oh man. And he heard, you know, he called the movie, I want to paint, I heard you paint houses. So I'm like, is he like announcing there's an official title change? So I almost wanted to write something and give it to the guys at Culture Vultures, like, The Irishman is changing titles. But I'm like, nobody else, I heard anything, a peep from it. So I'm like, either nobody else watched that interview with CNN or nobody cared. But it's like, I almost get the sense, and De Niro I saw later on, because as the movie ended, I got up not too long after the movie was over, because I'm like, oh my god, this movie was so long. I mean, it was great. It's a great movie. Obviously, if you can't tell, I'm excited about this movie, and I'm really glad I saw it in theater too. I mean, that was awesome. And especially with the experience of seeing it with somebody who's in the movie, that's cool. Again, that's something I don't have happen to me, except for maybe once or two times in my life thus far. Hopefully that changes in the future. But anyways, it's like I saw the De Niro was a producer on the film too, so it's like part of me almost in that moment kind of said, I wonder if De Niro and maybe Scorsese maybe clashed a little bit on this film, at least production, just behind the scenes a little bit. Because De Niro wanted the title to be "I Heard You Paint Houses," but Martin Scorsese's like, nah, he's known as Frank the Irishman Sheeran. Let's call the movie The Irishman. It almost felt like, and especially with that interview too, it's like, I wonder if Bob was a little pissed off. Now, of course, I'm on a first name basis with him, but I wonder if De Niro was a little pissed off about that, or he preferred, because I'm like, the name The Irishman doesn't pop up at the beginning; it only pops up at the end, which is, so many movies do that. I get a little, not like ticked off, but I'm like, seriously, some people today, it's like, you should put the title of the movie at the beginning so people know what movie they're seeing. It's like, I don't know why that's such a bad thing to have your title, the title of the movie, pop up in the beginning. It's like, what's wrong with that? It's like, is the title reveals, again, you know, like opening credits. So many people make this argument. It's like, opening credits ruin the movie. It's so invasive. It's like, it's opening credits. So what? It's like, you know, so many decades of movies did opening credits, and there was only opening credits. It's like, you know, and it's like, I get it. Yeah, a lot of people, you know, when the movie's over, they want to get out of there quicker. I get that. But it's like, they're not literally like invading you. It's not like they're literally holding you hostage or anything. They're opening credits. So what? It's like, do people have that same argument and that same issue with title reveals? It's like, what the hell? It's like, I don't get that. But, it's like, it was really weird too, because it popped up there. I'm like, oh, okay, it's gonna be like a chapters thing. Like, chapter 1 is I heard you paint houses. Chapter 2, there is no chapter 2. It's like, oh, it's just that. So I'm like, that was a little weird to me too. It's not a critique or anything, but it's just something I noticed that I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But yeah, the movie, without giving too much away, again, kind of jumps a little bit backwards and forwards in time. For the most part, it does that. Obviously, with the de-aging and stuff, that does that really well. You're never confused on where you are, because again, I'm very critical of when a movie is not told A to B. If it jumps around a lot, I mean, there's ways where it can work, and there's ways where it doesn't work, and for me, most of the time, it doesn't work, or I prefer the other way, or I'm like, you know, in a way, I'm like, this movie, it's not ruined if you tell it in the same story. You know, obviously, there's some stories where it's like, if you don't tell it in the specific order, you know, if you tell it chronologically A to B, it kind of ruins the story. Like with Gone Girl, it's like, oh, yeah, it's kind of impossible to tell that A to B exactly how it happened. Otherwise, the whole movie is like, oh, who cares? But this was a movie I felt like, it's not like it would have been ruined if it ran from beginning to end, but it's like, definitely having the narration helps with this, as it does in Goodfellas, as it does in Casino. It helps us, you know, ground us a little bit. This is, yeah, an example where narration works. And again, I'm a little sometimes critical of narration in movies, but this time it worked. And the bouncing back and forth, again, with the de-aging stuff, really helped with that. I was never confused on where I was time-wise, never confused on where I was with this or that. There's enough, you know, through points and stuff. There's enough, you know, clues as to where we are, like, it's specific years sometimes and stuff. Like, okay, if it's this, okay, then we know Kennedy's going to get shot pretty soon, or, you know, this, and and all that stuff. So, yeah, so that, I'd say, credit, obviously, to Thelma Schoonmaker for that. Obviously, that's, you know, that's a very tricky thing to pull off in the editing process, and I think she did it well. Well shot. Rodrigo Portillo, as we all know, he's a great cinematographer. Yeah, we mentioned a little bit in that other video. Their costume design by Sandy Powell, and somebody else did it too, but it's usually just Sandy Powell. But yeah, costumes are pretty good in this all the way through and stuff. And yeah, I mean, again, I mentioned, yeah, the makeup's really great. There is a lot of, I mean, there's, again, not a lot of stuff that I have to say that's like a negative about it. The only thing, yeah, the aging doesn't always work. I personally felt that the movie could have been shorter and still had the same impact at the end and stuff. The soundtrack works. Obviously, it's a Scorsese film, so we know there's going to be some good picks on the soundtracks, and yeah, there is. A lot of it is more the 40s, 50s, 60s era music. It doesn't really get into 70s music when we get into the 70s era, which was a little like, I could have used a little like when Sunshine of Your Love starts playing in Goodfellas, it's like, it's like, yes! Just charges up that scene, because we know something's going to happen to, who is that character? I forget. Is it Billy Batts? No, it's not Billy Batts in that scene. It's whoever it is in Goodfellas in that part. Oh, yeah, it's the coat guy. That's right, the guy who spent all the money. We know something's going to happen to that guy. It's like, I almost felt like, not that we needed that, but like to pump it up a little bit more, get us a little bit more excited into it. I mean, not that we didn't not have any excitement through the film, but like just to, you know, get that full Scorsese note, I felt like we needed like something like that, you know, to kind of charge us up, like a Stone song or something, you know, to charge us up. But we didn't really get that. I don't think there was any, can I look at what the soundtrack was on this? Yeah, I don't think we had any Rolling Stones in this. I'm not seeing, no. No, I noticed there was definitely like, yeah, a lot of kind of more jazzy stuff like Fats Domino and stuff like that. It's a good soundtrack and everything again, but yeah, I don't know. I just felt like, yeah, not like the exact like 100% what, you know, Scorsese will do for a soundtrack, which is almost always like a Rolling Stones and a this and a that and a something else, you know, 70s charged up, you know, soundtrack and stuff. But, you know, and again, it's part of his style, but he doesn't have to do it every time, and it's not like this is not a Scorsese movie because he doesn't have it, but yeah, I'm really kind of quipping a lot of stuff with this movie. I think overall it's a very well done film. I think I'm looking forward to seeing it again. It will be on Netflix later this coming week. I think it drops Wednesday, so that's just in time for Thanksgiving. So, you know, when you're done with your turkey and you want Dad to fall asleep, it's time to put on The Irishman. I don't know, maybe he'll you know, get through the whole thing. And again, I do think this will be definitely for the older generations. I felt like this is really weird too, because definitely where I live, it's like not a lot of people pay attention to like when movies are coming out. There's not a lot of big advertisement about that stuff. But it's like, again, from the, you know, the 65 on up crowd, it's like they knew The Irishman was coming, they knew it was here, and they were excited to see it. So I'm like, this might be one of those rare exceptions. So yeah, I feel, okay, that's my piece on The Irishman. I feel like we've been here forever, so let's get to Knives Out is the last one I saw. And this one, I did see early. It was at an AMC All-Access screening. It was, I didn't get especially picked out for this or anything. And it's a fun, just a blast movie. So going back to the scores, I do give The Irishman 9 out of 10. I do feel there's enough stuff in there where I was like, oh, I can't quite give it that perfect score, but like, it's definitely one of the best films of the year. Knives Out, yeah, that one for me is a 10 out of 10 because that movie, again, for what it's shooting for, what it's going for, it pretty much hits it spot on. I really had fun with this movie. Rian Johnson directing and writing, and the cast is phenomenal with Daniel Craig doing one of his best roles in a while. And again, I talked about it with Logan Lucky a couple years ago, but it's like Daniel Craig, and I remember I mentioned this years and years ago. I'd seen him in a skit for Stephen Colbert, so I'm like, this dude has hidden comedic genius in him, and we found that out with Logan Lucky. He's one of the most fun characters ever in that. And with here, again, he kind of unleashes that a little bit. It's a little more restrained because he's more of a serious character, but it's like there's a couple moments here and there where I'm like, he gets some of the biggest laughs in the movie, and it's great. Chris Evans, really fun role, especially when you look away from like and turn away from the kind of more serious Captain America role and stuff. This is fun to see him in. Anna de Armas is fun. Jamie Lee Curtis. The whole ensemble of the family is really fun. Her, Don Johnson, Toni Collette's fun. Christopher Plummer, I mean, obviously if you know the trailer and stuff, you know he's not a super big player in the movie, but when he's on screen, when they show him, he is having a blast in this movie, and that's fun to see. The girl from 13 Reasons Why, and the boy from It, and, you know, the whole cast. I mean, overall, you can tell they're having fun. Michael Shannon, we mentioned, yeah. Everybody's having fun. They're into their roles and stuff. It's definitely, yeah, it's Clue-esque. Definitely, it's a murder mystery and stuff. But like certain other Rian Johnson films, this one is not 100% what it seems. You know, for better or worse, like Last Jedi, this movie has a couple surprises in it. And there's especially something kind of happens relatively early on in the film, within about the first 40 minutes or so, where I'm like, oh, this movie's going here. Okay, so then I'm kind of sitting back like, okay, so then the whole movie is gonna, okay, what's it, okay, what? I'm like, the whole rest of there's like a lot of time to go here, and it's like, this part is happening in this way, or it's being told from this, I'm like, they're gonna bounce back on this some way or another, and it's like, I can't, obviously, isn't out yet, so I can't give away, obviously, too much about it, but it's like, I don't know. I'm like, this movie's really going to be twisty-turny if they start doing this. And it does, and it's pretty twisty-turny through the rest of the movie. And it's like, for the most part, I was very, very well entertained. And this movie, again, 2 hours, 10 minutes, but it flies by. You don't feel it for a second that it's 2 hours, 10 minutes. So, fun movie. I liked the last shot very much, but it's a little foreshadowed. There's a little shot before it that kind of ruins it. So I noticed right away, I'm like, ha-ha! And then they close up on it in the last shot. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you're beating me over the head now, but I got it. But it's like, I remember the audience didn't catch it, but I was almost a sold-out crowd. Sort of like The Irishman was also pretty close to that sold-out crowd, too. It's like the audience didn't catch it the first time like I did. And as soon as it was in the close-up, I'm like, okay, yeah, now. And then everybody picked up on it. And I'm like, yeah, but they kind of already gave that away. Anyways. That's neither here nor there. Again, the cast's good, story's good. We kind of mentioned this a little bit here. I can see this maybe edging its way into that original screenplay category. Yeah. I mean, again, it's out, you know, pretty soon, next week. I think, again, it opens Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving and stuff. It's a fun movie. Funny in spot. There's a couple moments, I think, where it's funnier when it's more subtle about it. There's a couple parts where they try to go over the top of the comedy. It's like, sometimes it gets a little too far, but for the most part, I think the comedy works. Again, it works better when it's more subtle. But yeah, I think there's definitely great moments there. Yeah, the only thing I would kind of complain about a little bit is the family ensemble. Unfortunately, it's like, and maybe this is not like a big critique, but like, I wish there was a little bit more of it, because we definitely get a sense of, oh, this person hates this person in the family, this person likes this person in the family, these two are best buddies, these two want to kill each other, you know, and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, we get that early on, and it's like, it's fun to see that stuff play out and stuff, but it's like, I almost wish, and there's moments where they're at each other's throats and all that too, but it's like, I almost wish there was a little bit more of that, because at a point the movie kind of turns into something else, and the whole family is almost gone for like, I don't know, a good 10, 20, 30-minute stretch where I'm like, I don't know, it's like, it's a little bit of a, you know, missed opportunity in that way, I guess, but like, at the same time, you know, this movie is kind of telling its own story, and if you divert away too much from that, then you're almost kind of critiquing it for, we should go back to this other stuff, because this other stuff is more relevant, even though we're having a blast with these characters. I'm sure also when this comes out on Blu-ray and stuff, there'll be probably a few deleted scenes where we get more of that, but it's like, man, it's like, I almost feel like I would have liked to have seen maybe just a hint more of that, at least another scene of that, to perfect this for me. But it's still, without that, it's still a really fun movie. And I guess fun might, maybe I'm just saying that word over and over again, just maybe I guess that's the best way to describe it. It's not a movie that takes itself too seriously, but it's not a parody. You know, it's really, it walks that line very finely. And definitely there, again, like I said, the humor really works at its best when it's a little bit more subtle and a little bit more like, you know, not trying to joke the joke, you know, so to speak. And there's a couple moments where it does joke the joke, and I was a little like, oh, you didn't have to go that far with it, or, you know, we got it, you didn't have to, you know, it's a little over delivered or a little overkilled, you know, but yeah. Again, you know, since it is a murder mystery, we can't give too much away, obviously, with the review and stuff, and it is out, you know, not for wide release yet. So, yeah, I kind of got this experience a little bit with Only the Brave a couple years ago, and I saw that early, and I remember I walked out of it, I'm like, oh my god, this movie has to be seen. It's so great. And actually, it was on TV earlier tonight. But seriously, that's another one you guys should seek out if you haven't seen yet. It's a totally different movie and stuff. But anyways, but Knives Out, I give it a 10 out of 10. I really, really liked it. It's definitely a movie that, if you're in the right mood for that sort of movie, and coming out of The Irishman, which is, you know, very dramatic, but also has a couple moments of humor in it, I was like, yeah, it'd be fun to kind of sit back and just watch a movie and just laugh at it. And I was also, you know, from the trailers and stuff, I was interested to see where this was going and stuff. And I do like these kind of Agatha Christie style things, like the Murder on the Orient Express remake. A couple of years ago, I liked a lot, but I didn't love it. And I've seen it a second time, and again, same deal, where it's like, I like those aspects of it, the searching for clues, and the, as soon as somebody's discovered, oh, somebody else might get murdered over here and stuff. I like that kind of style. I like that those kind of stories a lot. Like Hateful Eight, you know, was another one a few years ago that not everybody liked. But I mean, I like the Western aspect of it fine, but the murder mystery Agatha Christie section of that movie, I really liked. I really got involved with those parts when it was Sam Jackson and Walton Goggins holding everybody up, you know, everybody else against the wall while they're trying to figure everything out. It's like, those scenes I like. And there's a good scene, because another thing too, Daniel Craig is, you know, he's I guess the lead in this movie, but he's not, you don't really get down that he's the lead until the end. Because otherwise the movie kind of focuses more on Ana de Armas. So I have to say, I've seen her in a couple other things like The Blade Runner and what was the name of that other one I saw her in? But anyways, this is definitely the biggest impression she's left on me as an actress. I mean, there's moments of humor here. Otherwise, she takes the role pretty seriously. There's a quirk with her character that was kind of fun at first, and you could argue, I can see the argument of it being a little overplayed, but it's a nice quirk with her character. And it also kind of helps, it makes the story a little bit more interesting, I'll just say that. Anyways, but yeah, this was definitely the biggest impression left on me, and she kind of is almost the main character throughout the film until, like, you could argue until the end when Daniel Craig starts putting everything together one final time, you know, to kind of explain everything to the audience, you know, kind of one of those moments. But that being said, though, yeah, I do think he kind of, again, he is a little quiet through parts of the movie, and then he gets his moments to shine, and it's really fun. Yeah, so I feel like, yeah, that should really wrap it up there. So yeah, it's all 6 of these movies were good in one way or another. Pain and Glory was probably my least favorite of them, but that doesn't take anything away. So yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, I had kind of talked about this earlier in one of the other videos there, where I kind of mentioned, I said, I've not really loved a lot of movies outright this year. Peanut Butter Falcon, I do. Us, I love that movie. I had so much fun with that movie, and the screening experience, seeing it for the first time, definitely was like, wow, this is a great movie. And I forgot to mention Toy Story 4. I do like that one quite a bit. Not as much as the other Toy Stories, but it's definitely a solid movie. That one I gave a 9 out of 10 too. And I am in the process of watching it again. Here I got it on disc and stuff, so I wanted to watch it again. Of course, because I grew up with that franchise and stuff, as I've mentioned. But so those three for sure were on my, were like the big ones on my top 10 list. And now it's like, okay, now like 5 of these 6 are also like right there. So, I always forget to like release my top 10 list because there's always like 1 or 2 that I miss that I never get to until like a year later or 2 years later. And then I'm like, well, it's like, for the list for like, I don't know, for example, say 2016, it's like, well, it's 2019 now. Nobody cares. So it's like I never get to do that. But anyways. But yeah, one thing I will mention really quick here, quick plug, I guess I can give away here on Culture Vultures. I'm doing a monthly thing. We're obviously almost to the end of the year, but I've been doing a monthly series where I introduce a top 10 list of best films of the decade by genre. So we did like what did we do? Sci-fi fantasy for the first month, and then we've done romance, we've done action. Getting together with the editor here to work on the one for the westerns for this month, and the next month we'll do superhero movies to close out the decade. So I'm thinking of doing, when that's all done, I might come back here and kind of just share my thoughts in that way on the channel here. Just do a video of like, my personal favorite films of the decade, do like maybe a quick roundup of the ones, my picks for top 10 films of the decade by genre, and kind of run through those a little bit. So I might do that in the future. Obviously, one thing though that has happened here in the Oscar race since is, I kind of alluded to it there in that other video too, was 1917. We've now had early screenings of, so that pretty much completes everything for this year, except for Cats. I mean, Cats is probably the last one that we haven't heard anybody speak of yet. But as far as the big, serious Oscar contenders that we were all worried about, definitely 1917 was the last one. And now that, some people have seen it, and it's really blown the roof off, some people have said, of this Oscar race, it's like, okay, it feels like we're getting to that stage now. And definitely with the accelerated schedule this year, with nominations out earlier, Golden Globe nominations are like 2 weeks away now, which is crazy. I think it's actually 2 weeks from, Monday, if I'm not mistaken, because it's that, not the 2nd, but the 9th of December. So that's it's 3 weeks, 3 weeks from this Monday. So it's like that came up fast. So, and that whole week is usually when we get SAG and Critics' Choice too. So it's like, that's when it's like, it's a good week for this movie, it's a bad week for this movie, and stuff like that. Or this movie's been a big surprise all week getting into the stuff. So, obviously that's going to be a busy week, and I'll be here to do live reactions. No worries about that. I'll be here to do that. Indie Spirit Awards are out. As we mentioned, the Makeup Guild Awards are out. So those, I didn't cover as much. And my work schedule is keeping me busy. 10-hour days, 4 days a week. So it's like, it's a little hard. Plus I'm doing freelance stuff for the website, and that stuff I do have to, definitely, I made commitments on that. So I can't, totally drop that. And I don't want to drop that. I enjoy doing that very much, and it's good to get the word out there as many places as I can, obviously, for, being as passionate as I am about all these subjects and stuff. So, I feel like, there's other stuff, of course, as we go through the year. So yeah, just keep that in mind, guys. The live reaction videos will continue this year. There will be no interruptions with those. Those are 100% going to happen. Unless I die, but to be morbid about it. But there's nothing with my work schedule that conflicts with that. The only thing, occasionally, like last year, I would do like update videos as soon as the critics regional awards were done, like for like New York and for LA and stuff. Those, unfortunately, I might have to group together when they're all done or stuff. National Society of Film Critics might be the same deal. It depends on what day it is, what I'm doing that day, stuff like that. So those videos might be less frequent, just so you guys know going forward. So stuff like when they announced the critics or the Indie Spirit Awards, if anybody was looking for a video that day, it's like, and they didn't find it, that's why, because my schedule is very different from what it's been the past couple of years, when it's like those past couple of years, when I was in college, my work schedule is a little different, class schedule is obviously very different. It's like, you can kind of, it's easier to kind of work everything in that case. But here it's like, nah, not this time. So, yeah. That's all I got for now. Again, I'll have some time codes and stuff for this video. Obviously, if you've seen it all the way through, then yeah, that was no trouble at all. But if you want to skip around a little bit, go back to something, that'll help you with that. So we'll catch you guys next time. Not sure when that'll be. Probably when we get to the critics stuff. If not, then I'll do some updated Globes predictions fairly soon. Obviously, I'll get to them before we get the nominations out. I'll definitely do a final predictions video for each of those two. Those are also going to continue. One way or another, we'll get those out. Don't worry. One way or another, we'll do them. So for final predictions and for live reactions, those will continue no matter what. So, yeah. So until next time, again, probably regional awards is probably the next time you'll see me. If not, we'll do some more fun with Globes and SAG and maybe some early BAFTA and early Critics' Choice predictions too. So I'll keep working, guys. We'll catch you next time.